Starting in this lesson, we move to looking at what is holiness. What is this thing that I need to be attaining if I want to see the Lord? And typically when we start to look at some definition of something, what is something, we typically turn to some reference document, an English dictionary, a Bible dictionary, etc., to see what it says about that. Let's do a little of that as we get started. You can look up some definitions of holy. Let's go over a couple quickly. One says, undefiled by sin, free from wickedness, religiously observing every moral obligation, pure, holy, pious. They actually use the word holy in this definition to define holiness. Really, I can't stand it when they use a form of the word to define another word. And now that I look at that and I read that, there's a bunch of other words in there that I probably have to look up to understand what I just read. I don't question the definition, but not particularly helpful in and of itself. Another definition is dedicated or consecrated to God or a religious purpose, sacred. I notice with this definition that holiness here can include leaving out God. Dedicated or consecrated to some religious purpose, but may or may not include God. That was interesting. One says simply devoted to the service of God as a definition of holy, and another says morally and spiritually excellent. So in that case, a person can be spiritually excellent without being morally excellent, or vice versa. All of these are helpful, but may raise as many questions as they provide answers. In some of the study that I did on holiness, one of the references I saw said that one of the most basic and simple ways to think about holy was to take the word different and put the word different in the passage each time the word holy showed up. And my first reaction was, well, that feels overly simplistic. I'm not sure that really would be adequate, but I did that with 2 or 3 verses, and let's do that now if we can. Let's look at 1 Peter 1, 15 and 16, one of the verses we've looked at in our previous lessons. It says, "But as he who called you is different, you also be different in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be different, for I am different." Romans 12:1, if we use this technique, says, "Present your bodies as a living sacrifice, different and acceptable to God." And Hebrews 12:14, it says, "Strive for peace with everyone, and for being different, without which no one will see the Lord." When I hear these verses read in this way, it actually starts to make some sense to me. If I'm going to seek holiness in my life and to gain some measure of it, then I'm going to be different. I'm going to have to change who I am and what I am. I'm clearly going to have to be different. And so as I read those and thought about that, I thought this idea of being different, equated or related to holy, really starts to connect with me, to resonate, as they might say, with me. And Hebrews, that passage in Hebrews says that without that difference, I'll not see the Lord. So this difference is critical. But what is this difference that we're talking about, and where does it come from? I think the passage in Peter actually answers that for us. Let's look at that passage again. Let's read it with the word holy, and then we'll read it with the word different. It says, "You also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy." And now let's read it with the word different again. you also be different in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be different, for I am different. And the I in that verse we just read is referring to God. So we shall be different as God is different, or as God is holy, or as God is different. And then that leads to the question, well, how is God different? If we're going to take this approach, how is it that God is different? And that's what we're going to look at in the next few lessons. What are the traits and the characteristics and the nature of God that are different? And do I understand those differences, and can I then start to think about how those characteristics and traits would make me a different person? So we're going to look at God's holiness. We're not going to rely on some dictionary definition. We're going to let the Bible's description of God define holiness. We'll let God define for us what is holiness, as opposed to some other man-made definition. So we'll start looking in the next several lessons about what is it about God that is holy, that is different, and that's what we'll let guide us. Thank you for being a part of this. I hope you'll think about what we shared today, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we take the next several lessons and look at God's holiness and how He is different. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next lesson.